Greetings, this is Ted A. Roberts with Seeking the Everlasting Gospel Ministries, and we're finally on chapter 6 of my book, Satan, the Devil, and Hell. And this chapter is called The Satan and Job. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's quote Job chapter 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. Now, believe it or not, this verse is our biggest hint as to whom the Satan is in the book of Job. We have to ask ourselves, what was he doing in the midst of the crowd of the sons of God? Also, what did it mean that they gathered together to present themselves before the Lord? John Gill, in his exposition of the entire Bible, is quick to point out that these sons of God were angels. In fact, Adam Clarke, in his commentary on the Bible, goes as far as to say this: there was a day when the sons of God, all the versions, and indeed all the critics, are puzzled with the phrase sons of God. And it's got a Hebrew word here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Literally, sons of God, that's what it means, or sons of the gods, even. Now, the Latin Vulgate has simply these words here, sons of God. The Septuagint has these words, means the angel of God. The Chaldee means the troops of angels, that's how they have it. The Syriac retains the Hebrew words and letters, only leaving out the demonstrative other Hebrew word, he, and the word Elohim. Thus, in Syriac, Bani Elohim. The Arabic nearly copies the Hebrew also. Arabic, whatever. I'm not going to try to pronounce these words. To which, if we give not the literal translation of the Hebrew, we may give what translation we please. Now, Coverdell, from 1535, this is the English version that came out right after Tyndale, he translates it servants of God. The Targum supposes that this assembly took place on the day of the Great Atonement, which occurred once each year. And there was a day of judgment in the beginning of the year. And the troops of the angels came that they might stand in judgment before the Lord. But what are we to make of this whole account? Expositions are endless. Which in turn reminds us of what a lot of people connect with what was said in the book of Genesis. Let's go to Genesis 6:2. That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, that they took wives of all of which they chose. Now immediately, our minds are set a-whirl of angels flying downward to the earth and mating with earthen women, and then having children called the Nephilim, giants, men of renown. This sets the tone of the Bible for many who see fantastical images of good versus evil on a grand scale. We then see this same kind of imagery throughout the rest of the Bible, all the way down to the book / the letter of Revelation. And if we wouldn't know any better, the text of the Bible would almost read as fantastical as the famous Greek mythologies, as those other pagan stories shows us mighty legends and magical fantasy. Also of fantastical monsters, beasts of grotesque sight, devils and demons, and so forth. But could this passage in Genesis, once again, be nothing more than us misreading metaphors? Is that impossible? Well, actually, in those verses of Genesis, there's really nothing there that should really forcefully dictate our thoughts to such fantastical conclusions anyway. Now let's read them from the King James Bible. Genesis 6:1-4. Came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all of which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants, Nephilim, in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Were these sons of God really angels? Well, that's the popular belief anyway. But there's really no way of actually proving such a theory. Now, here's the full Strong's meaning for the word son used in these verses as sons of God. And let's see if we can find the word angel mixed up in there somewhere. Now, I'm going to list it here, which is the word ben for sons. And it's quite long, and I'll leave it on the screen for a minute or so. But really, I've highlighted the only thing that could give us cause to say that it's an angel, anointed one. That's the only thing in there. But amongst all those other definitions, it would be a very terrible stretch of the imagination to conclude that these sons weren't really actual flesh and blood men. All it really proves is that these sons were the anointed earthen children of God. Believe it or not, there are some scholars who actually read it this way. For instance, John Gill's exposition of the entire Bible. He says, there were giants in the earth in those days, that is, in the days before the sons of God took the daughters of men for wives, in such a general manner as before declared, or before the declension and apostasy became so universal. Even in the times of Jared, as the Arabic writers understand it, who says that these giants were begotten on the daughters of Cain by the children of Seth, who went down from the mountain to them in the days of Jared. See Genesis 5:20. The word Nephilim comes from a word which signifies to fall. And these might be so called either because they made their fear to fall upon men, or men through fear to fall before them because of their height and their strength, or rather because they fell and rushed on men with great violence and oppressed them in a cruel and tyrannical manner, or as some think, because they fell off and were apostates from the true religion, which is much better than to understand them as to be apostate angels, whom the Targum of Jonathan mentions by name and calls them, what's this word here? Shazai and Uziel, who fell from heaven and were in the earth in those days. There was a mixture of the Canaanites and Sethites, or Cainites really, Cainites and Sethites, which were the offspring of the sons of God, or prosperity of Seth, mixing with the daughters of men, the prosperity of Cain. Now, Albert Barnes' notes in the Bible says, the former refers to the apostasy of the descendants of Seth, and the cause and consequences of that. When men began to multiply, the separate families of Cain and Seth would come into contact with each other. The daughters of the stirring Cainites, distinguished by the graces of nature, the embellishments of art, the charms of music and song, even though destitute of their loftier qualities of like-mindedness with God, would attract attention and prompt to unholy alliances. The phrase sons of God means an order of intelligent beings who retain the purity of moral character, originally communicated or subsequently restored by the Creator. They are called the sons of God because they have His spirit or disposition about them anyway. The sons of God, therefore, are those who are on the Lord's side, who approach Him with duly significant offerings, who call upon Him by His proper name, and who walk with God in their daily conversations. Adam Clarke's commentary on the Bible, finally, I think it's our last commentary quote. There were giants in the earth, Nephilim, from Nephal, meaning he fell. Those who had apostolized are fallen from the true religion, that is. The Septuagint translates the original word by that word there, which literally signifies earth-born, and which we follow in them term giants, without having any reference to the meaning of the word, which we generally conceive to signify persons of enormous stature. But the word, when properly understood, makes very just distinction between the sons of men and the sons of God. Those were the Nephilim, the fallen earthborn men with the animal and devilish mind, etc. Showing us that all this does not have to be fantastical imagery. But, and as I have myself believed for many years, these sons of God from the righteous lineages in the earth, the descendants of Seth, had looked upon the daughters of Cain, the unrighteous lineage in the earth, and decided to take for them wives. Now, before we continue on, I have our first explanatory note for this chapter.